When we first encountered the ginger paradigm, we explored a concept we call Wirtschaftsdramaturgie.
There you go.
For those of you who don't speak German, please try to pronounce this for me. You speak German.
Okay.
Now, you know, that's hard to pronounce, that's for sure, but it's also very hard to translate. Trying to translate this into English for a long time never really worked. People came up and they said, why don't you just call it storytelling? But as you will find out in the next couple of minutes, the idea is something quite different. So what we do, we advise organizations.
Right, and what we tell them is sometimes hard to swallow because we tell them to tell the truth. Yes, to be as honest as possible to stakeholders, to employees, to customers. So the question comes up, what is truth? There are so many points of view, and still we demand the truth?
But then how can we seek the truth if there are so many points of view? How can we possibly pick out the right truth?
Well, pick the one that is solving the problem.
What problem?
I suggest the one that's bugging you the most.
Well, when we were kids, we were obsessed with cinema. Like this was our place for the truth. And as people obsessed with cinema, we also did our own little films. Super 8 movies. Now, here you get an idea what they were all about. Now, they somehow depicted our inner truth of those days. Some sort of cultural discomfort, as you can maybe tell. A dark vision of the future.
Yeah. Cultural discomfort, where does it come from? I suggest, I think, and many people agree, it comes from change. So old things are being replaced by new ones. Here, this is, for instance, something old and something that's dealing with truth. This is how in ancient times they dealt with the problem of truth. So they pretended there is a guy on top, and he is in direct connection to God, and God, he knows the truth. So it's a mystery to me why God takes the time only to talk to one person. Maybe you got a tight schedule, I don't know. But the thing is, the idea is that the truth is dribbling down from top to bottom, and here you go. So do we still believe that this is a very good structure for the truth? And still, there are so many organizations that in our times rely on that paradigm only.
Now, already back in the 70s of the last century, some people came up with a concept they called the rhizome. You know, they took it from biology. Some plants grow as rhizomes, like their rootstocks. One of these plants is the ginger. And now there's different quality of the rhizome, but maybe the easiest way to describe it is it's like everything is connected to everything, not like in a hierarchy, top-down only. Now, today's hierarchies are very much challenged by this rhizome idea. Why is that? Mostly because of social media. So it's a technology-driven process. And the hierarchies turn more and more into rhizomes. That's what we call the ginger paradigm. But what happens to truth then?
Well, as I said, look for the truth that will solve the problem. investigating what truth is, you will find interesting structures. Like, for instance, what are the parties involved? Why are some parties opposing parties? What actually is at stake? And in determining all these different points of views, you can ask yourself, how can you create synergy?
Map it.
What?
You can map it.
Oh, smart idea.
Now, rhizomes are described as maps as well. Reality is created by the process of interpretation. Now, if you show me the simple map, like of the stage here, now there's the screen, and there's Ip, and there's Marc, and you are here. So you and all the other people can find themselves inside the map. So with a map, you can create a truth all stakeholders believe in because they are part of it. Now, we want to show you today 2 examples on a very concrete level on how you can work with those maps to create the truth in the rhizome.
Yeah, one is what we call the conflict map, and the other one is the so-called as-if map.
So, as an example, we picked a historic media example. Now, this is maybe one of the most famous photographs ever published in history.
Yeah, and this one isn't. This was meant to be, but it never worked quite well. It was taken a couple of hours earlier.
So both of them were taken on the same day for, let's say, the same incident. Now, what's the big difference? What makes the famous one? What is the key to success for the famous one? What is your guess? Give me some ideas. Dynamic, thank you.
Yeah,
real
good,
and dynamic. Now, what makes it real, what dynamic? I mean, you can see there's dynamic movement, like the flag is a little more dynamic and the hands are a little more dynamic than this hands. But is it the dynamic of what you can see on the picture? Now, this picture here, the left one, actually depicts a result. So the thing is done, it's finished. You cannot participate. The right one shows a process. So you're part of it. You can help those guys lift up the flag. And the most important part of the picture is where you can see kind of nothing. I mean, you can see the sky, but because it opens up a space for your own imagination. You can put your own imagination inside this space, and it opens up a space to take emotional investment. And in fact, this picture is a map as well.
So let's see how this thing here is a map. Here you can see there are like 2 areas, like 2 countries. The one is the more active one. This here is the green area, and the red area is more the area of the enemy. And the thing that's separating them is the flagpole, and the object of conflict here is the soil. Interesting thing is that the one thing that brings the 2 parties together, the green and the red one, is the flag.
But how does the US flag bring the US Marines and the enemy together?
Yeah, that's a good question. Let's take a look at the conflict map. And let's bear in mind that this photograph was designed for Americans to look at. So the enemy is, when we look at the object of conflict, it is actually the morale. So the enemy is not the Japanese. The enemy, that's a certain attitude within the American public towards the war effort. So the problem was that the people didn't buy enough war bonds, and by using this picture, this problem was solved. So you can apply this structure, I call it the DNA of a problem, to anything, like a children's song. Mary had a little lamb. It is the same thing here as with the Second World War. And you can apply it to things like this here. This shows you what happens when a linear approach is confronted with a nonlinear system.
Now, this is a typical change communication conflict schema. That the object of conflict is the mindset. Usually people say, we have to change the mindset. So those who actively communicate this, they say, of course, we have the right mindset. But by saying that, even if they don't speak it out, they say to the others, you have the wrong mindset. So people usually don't like that. So this might be the conflict, the real conflict, but to solve the problem, you have to somehow translate it into a new narrational conflict to solve that. Otherwise, you worsen the problem. Just like with the Iwo Jima pictures.
Yeah, so in the case of Iwo Jima, you had a photograph. But what if you don't have a photograph at hand? Then I say you create something, and this is what we call the as-if map. Now, here, this is a as-if map. Let's pretend we here as a community, we are not a galaxy, we are not a solar system. This time we are a continent. And immediately, by addressing you in such a way, you say, okay, well, if we are a continent, where am I? And where am I headed?
So again, everybody can actively participate. And by doing so, everybody becomes co-owner of this territory. Now, this territory can be an organization, it can be an idea, it can be a strategy.
This is actually the real-life situation where we used that map. The problem at the time was the stakeholders didn't realize their position, but by pretending that they are like a continent, immediately they snapped into position without even thinking about it. So this solved another problem.
And there's another aspect of this I want to point out. It is also a physical object that you implement into this organization. In Wirtschaftsdramaturgie, we call this a relational object.
Yeah, it need not be a big thing like this map here. It can be, we used hats and umbrellas, and once we used a sugar bowl.
Now, this was just a brief taste of Wirtschaftsdramaturgie. See, I have a hard time spelling it. Social and economic environments get more and more complex. So the hierarchies turn into rhizomes. And the question is, how can you create a common truth in such an environment? And by involving the stakeholders in this process, by opening up a space for emotional investment, then the possibilities become quite unlimited, I would say.
So, don't be afraid. Take the problem and embrace it.
And map it.
What?
Map it.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.